She called him Daddy Albert. Not sarcastically, not as a performance. She meant it. Albert Grossman was the most powerful manager in rock music in the 1960s. He managed Bob Dylan, he managed the band, he managed Peter, Paul, and Mary, he managed Richie Havens and Gordon Lightfoot and Paul Butterfield, and in 1967 he signed Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the holding company. He was the person Janis trusted most in the music business, the father figure she had been looking for since Port Arthur. The man in the room who knew how everything worked and would protect her from all the ways it could go wrong. He had also, without telling her, taken out a $200,000 life insurance policy on her life. He knew she was using heroin. He collected when she died. Almost nobody in the music industry talked about this for decades. The information is in Barney Hoskins' exhaustively documented book Small Town Talk, drawn from interviews with people who were there. It is documented. It happened. And it happened to a woman who called him Daddy Albert. Albert Grossman was born in Chicago in 1926, the son of Russian Jewish immigrants who worked as tailors. He grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Crown Heights. He studied economics at Roosevelt University. He went into the club business after college and discovered, in the specific way that certain people discover certain things, that he had a gift. The gift was for seeing talent before anyone else did, and for understanding, with a clarity that most people in the entertainment business never quite achieved, that talent was an asset that could be managed, developed, deployed, and, if handled correctly, made enormously valuable. He opened the Gate of Horn Folk Club in Chicago in 1956. He moved to New York. He became the manager of Bob Gibson, then of other folk musicians who were circling the Greenwich Village scene in the late 1950s. And in 1962, he signed a 20-year-old singer-songwriter named Bob Dylan. Dylan, by his own later account, signed the contract without reading it. Read that sentence again. Dylan signed the contract without reading it. Without reading it closely, Hoskins writes, Dylan signed a contract with Grossman that gave his manager half the rights to Dylan's publishing royalties. Half. In the years that followed, as Bob Dylan became one of the most successful and most celebrated songwriters in the history of American music, as like a rolling stone and blowin' in the wind and the times they are a-changin' and tangled up in blue generated millions of dollars in publishing income. Albert Grossman received 50% of those earnings. Dylan, who had signed without reading closely, spent years discovering the full dimensions of what he had agreed to. Grossman, who had been there when the pen went down on the paper, knew exactly what had been agreed. In the mid-1960s, Grossman bought a stone house on nearly 60 acres of land in Bearsville, just outside Woodstock in the Catskill Mountains of New York. The asking price was $50,000. He had that kind of money. He expanded, he bought more property, he built a recording studio, the Bearsville Sound Studio, which would be managed by Todd Rundgren. He opened restaurants, he established Bearsville Records. He created, in a small town in upstate New York, a complete infrastructure for the management and development of music that he controlled from the center. Dylan bought his own house nearby, Hi-Lo-Ha, in the town of Woodstock proper. He had been introduced to the area by Grossman. He liked it. He settled there with his wife Sarah and began the most privately productive period of his life. The band moved into a pink house in the area. The basement tapes were recorded there. Woodstock, New York became the center of a musical world that Grossman had, in a very real sense, built. Janis Joplin came to Bearsville. She visited the area. She was one of Grossman's clients now, signed in 1967 after Monterey, managed alongside the other names in his stable. She came to the compound in the mountains, and she was comfortable there in the way that people who are looking for a family are comfortable when they find one. She called him Daddy Albert. Grossman's management style was distinctive. He was, by the accounts of everyone who worked with him, genuinely effective. He negotiated royalty rates of 20% for his acts at a time when most recording artists were getting 3%. He understood contracts, leverage, and the specific mechanics of power in the music business in a way that very few managers of his era matched. He was also, by the accounts of everyone who worked with him, operating primarily in his own interests. The two things coexisted. His clients got better deals than they would have gotten without him. He also extracted terms for himself that they did not fully understand they had agreed to. With Dylan, half the publishing royalties from a contract signed without being read. With Janis, the insurance policy. Grossman took out a $200,000 life insurance policy on Janis Joplin. The policy included accidental death provisions. He knew by this point that she was using heroin. He knew what heroin did to people. He had been in the music business long enough to know what the actuarial tables looked like for a 26-year-old rock singer with a heroin habit. He made the calculation. He signed the policy. She did not know. She was calling him Daddy Albert. She was trusting him with her career, her money, her public image, and the specific comfort that comes from believing that someone powerful is looking out for you. He was, in his way, looking out for her. He was also insuring against her death for his own benefit. Both things were true simultaneously. October 4th, 1970, Janis Joplin died in room 105 of the Landmark Motor Hotel in Los Angeles. She was 27 years old. The heroin that killed her was unusually pure. There was no way she could have known. Albert Grossman collected on the insurance policy $200,000. Accidental death provisions. The calculation he had made when he took out the policy had been, in the cold arithmetic of such things, correct. She had trusted him with her life. He had, literally, insured it. Bob Dylan, in the years after Janis Joplin's death, eventually confronted the full dimensions of what he had signed in 1962. The exact details of the legal proceedings between Dylan and Grossman, and later between Dylan and Grossman's estate, as Grossman died in 1986, have been documented in various accounts of the era. The relationship deteriorated significantly in the early 1970s as Dylan began to understand what the contract meant in practice. There was litigation. There was a settlement. Dylan was able to confront the situation because Dylan was still alive. Janis Joplin was not. She died at 27 without ever fully understanding what had been done in the documents she had trusted Grossman to manage, without ever sitting across from a lawyer and hearing the terms read back to her, without ever having the conversation that Dylan eventually had. She called him Daddy Albert. She trusted him. She died. He collected. Dylan found out. Dylan fought back. Janis never got the chance. Albert Grossman died on January 25, 1986. He was 59 years old. He was on the Concorde, flying from New York to London. He had planned to continue to Cannes for a music convention. He had a heart attack on the plane. He had outlived Janis Joplin by 15 years. He had outlived Jimi Hendrix by 15 years. He had outlived many of the people whose careers he had shaped and from whose careers he had profited. He is buried behind the Bearsville Theater, near the studio he built in the town he helped create. Robbie Robertson of the band said, when accepting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, if it wasn't for Grossman, the festival might have been called Poughkeepsie. The Poughkeepsie generation just doesn't have the same ring to it. Robertson was half joking. He was also right. Grossman built Woodstock. He built the studio. He built the scene. He negotiated the royalty rates that gave his clients more than they would have gotten otherwise. He also insured Janis Joplin's life without telling her. He also took half of Dylan's publishing royalties from a contract Dylan signed without reading. Both things were true. They were always both true simultaneously. That was who Albert Grossman was. There is a version of this story that makes Grossman a villain. There is another version that makes him a product of his time and his industry. A man who operated by the rules of a business that had no rules, who extracted terms that his clients didn't understand because his clients didn't read their contracts and didn't hire independent lawyers and trusted the man who was supposed to be on their side. Both versions are probably true. What is simply true without interpretation is this: Janis Joplin called him Daddy Albert. She saw him as a protector. She trusted him more than she trusted almost anyone in the business. He had insured her life for his own benefit without telling her. She died. He collected. She never knew. Here is what this story asks you. Has there ever been someone in your life, someone you trusted, someone you gave the father figure role to, someone who was genuinely good to you in many ways, who was also, without your knowledge, arranging things for their own benefit at your expense? Janis Joplin was 27 years old when she died. She had given 4 years of everything she had to the music. She had trusted Grossman with the business side because the business side was not where she lived. She was right that she needed someone to handle the business side. She was wrong about who that someone was. Dylan eventually found out. Dylan is still here. Janis never got the chance. Daddy Albert collected. Subscribe. The next story goes somewhere nobody has taken you before.